All right, so in order to register, you need to pick a group. So here I'm going to go ahead and go to Access with SQL Server, which is the last one on the list. And here I'll put in a username. And I've already done this a couple times, so I'm going to do temp 2. And then I'm going to pick a password. I'm going to use my ATM password, so you can rob me in the parking lot and grab my ATM card if you ever find out what my password is. Oh, look, looks like I am doing this wrong. So I need to click on this red button here. So just keep in mind that you need to click on the red button at the top and not the login button. So I'm going to click on Register with SQL Server. And that's what it takes. Now, I think what we want to do there is you want to finish the registration process by enter the rest of the information here, of course, and your email address. And I'm just going to put in a fake email address. And then it's going to ask you to confirm, put in a password. Now, once you signed in, I'm going to go ahead and sign in now. Instead of registering, I'm going to sign in. You can then select a chapter to log into. And I am all fingers today. Hold on a second. I got to take the 2 out of here. And then I'm going to put in my password. Cancel. No, I keep hitting the wrong button, don't I? JSOTO temp a. No, I keep running the wrong password. Sorry about that. Let me just try something else. No, all right. Anyway, once you register and log in, you can then select other groups to belong to, which is the point of the whole thing. Sorry about that. Couldn't get that to work. Anyway, after Ben's presentation, we'll have a short section on questions that you may have regarding SQL Server Access or anything in Access in general. So stay tuned for that right after Ben's presentation. So I am going to pass it on to Ben, and we'll get to it. Now, Ben, can you confirm for me what you logged in as Ben, right? Not viewer 19. I keep getting viewer 19 wants to present. So, Ben, if you could let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to pick Ben from the list here of users. And I've asked Ben to present. Next time I have to ask you. Ben declined to present to her. Okay. Let's see. Ben, I'm going to ask you to present, so I'm going to pass the presentation role again to you. I may have to unmute everybody. Let me see. Ben, you don't hear your terp. All right, let me take over the presentation and then unmute here so that we can hear Ben. All right, I'm now going to pass this on to Ben.
Okay, let's see what we have here. One moment.
All right. Ben, are you viewer 19 or you just Ben?
So I am signed in two different places. One second here.
I keep getting a viewer 19 wants to present. Is that you?
One moment.
All right, that was indeed the case.
Okay, let's try this again. This is Ben speaking. Can everybody hear me? Okay, just get a quick yes or no.
Yes.
You're very faint.
Sound fine to me.
Okay, just making sure here. Well, I will speak as loud as I can here. So I do have some questions for you. If during the presentation questions arise, please feel free to use chat to type your messages to me. Maybe we can sort of do Q&A as we go along here. For those of you who may not know, I am Ben Clothier. I am deaf, and I do use a sign language interpreter, so my presentation will be interpreted by an interpreter on the line tonight. But again, if you have any questions, if you need any terms clarified, just anything along the way that isn't quite registering, just go ahead and send me a chat, and we will let's begin. So synchronizing SQL Server Databases across continents. So many of the clients that I work with are based in the Western United States as well as Asia, and they do use one database in the Western U.S., and we're able to communicate with that database with no issues. The one in Asia is much slower. The process, there's a lot more wait time. It's not nearly as fast. So we are trying to develop technology, and we're in a preview at the moment, and it's been impressive, the replication we've been able to achieve. So I've been approached, people wanting to do the same sort of replication for themselves, allowing people to work offline. If there's no internet connection, they can still keep working. And then later on when there is a connection, they can sync up again. And that information can be spread all over the world. And also the goal is to have the communication occur at a more rapid speed, much quicker, in a high performance for local processing. So there is a database in the cloud, which it tends to run slowly. In 1 second, please. And then that information can be placed onto from the local servers onto the cloud to be shared and used on a wider scale. And we're also we're exploring a turnkey solution here. It's quite complex. There's a lot of work behind the scenes, a lot of code writing, more than many clients are. Pardon me, are just say I don't have the time. This is overwhelming. This is a lot to do. But once something is developed that is essentially you unbox it, you literally turn the key and you're off and running. So question I want to pose to you guys as far as jet replication. Who is familiar with it? Who's participated in it? Who has any experience with it? I see. Okay, is anybody there? Never used. Okay, there we go. Thank you. It's actually an awesome form of replication. It's a bit complex. There's a lot to it. The end result, the actual service, is fantastic. So it requires precision. Any false move can actually throw off the whole process. So it requires care when using it, but is a fantastic service. So we've been using it since 2007, writing the code and in offline mode. It is not a SQL database, and if you're in one second, please. If you're in data model, it looks a bit complex. There's a lot there. So we're exploring. We're trying to make it something a little more simple, something that isn't so overwhelming to people that view it. So the SQL Server was placed online, so that can be shared, and it's not a replication. But it is one way that we can avoid having to replicate databases. The downfall, or one of the downsides to that, is that it is a slow it's a slow running program. There's a lot of changes that need to be made to the code to get the program to run smoothly. And clients say, I don't have the time, I don't have the money, and we sort of hit the brick wall. So some people did the replication. They sort of tried it on their own and had varying levels of success. So there are different types and different manners in which to replicate and to share the data. And there has been some frustration with people trying to do it on their own. So Azure, that data syncing, and I wanted to share with you how that works. There's the hub with the spokes, and if there's one database under Azure that is collecting all of the information, and that's being transmitted and synced up with other spokes within the hub, those people do have the control to share that information among one another. And it's at the hub's discretion who can receive or access that information from the database and who cannot. So that information is put out there. It's also taken back in. It can either, or it can just be put out there and not taken back in. So unidirectional, if you will. So people were, one second please. So people were excited when the news was breaking of these developments. They were eager to try it out to see if it was a fit for them. And not all data types are supported, but anything, more of a basic type is supported. Anything more complex is not yet supported. So the syncing for the data and the scheduling, the table, means that if a person is on a SQL server, they will have their view. It'll say in process, in stored process. It is not a replication, so that can be worked around. And there also a single row cannot exceed the 24 megabytes. So, and also large amounts of information cannot be replicated. So it's that 50 characters or less. And most importantly is the last point here, the maximum of 30 endpoints. So that means you can have 30 persons or entities involved, up to, but not to exceed 30. So I have been asked if XML is supported, and the answer is no. It is not supported. XML can be replaced with text, unlimited, and that does not pose a large problem. So the database itself can sync up to 5 different groups. I can go into more detail on that later on. I just wanted to make a mention of it now. So it can have a maximum of 5 local instances. So anything beyond 5 is not an option. So up to 5. So of course, as it stated, what do I need? You need an Azure account, of course. You do need a SQL database. You can have one second, please. You cannot have 2 databases. So there's a local or all the Azure. So you can at least 1 second database, which which can be another SQL. And so you must have 1 Azure at least, and then the other locals can be Azure as well, or a different type. So when I first started giving demonstrations of this, so we would have an agent that would be helping us synchronize the local databases to the cloud. So on the Azure portal, you'll go to the SQL database. At the bottom, you will select SQL. Let me check the actual verbiage here. The agent will have a link that can be selected, and the program can be downloaded and installed. And the program must be downloaded. There's only 1 agent that can install it for each SQL server. So again, there's a maximum of one agent. Alrighty, 1 second, I'm just checking the messages here. So yes, the program at that point is run. So you'll need to provide a user, make sure there are enough people to access it, to make the database, to make the changes to the database. If there's not enough permissions, then there could be a problem, the local account. So while it's installing, I saw some questions coming through here. Can the question in regard to HIPAA and security? Very good question. The response is that Microsoft has said that their data center is in compliance with all laws, confidentiality, etc. All the laws that are in place, those are taken into account and followed, and they're up to date on that. So confidentiality, security, as well as the European laws. It is the responsibility of the SQL agent or operator to make sure that things do stay current. But in answer to your question of security regarding HIPAA, yes, it is secure. Yes, it can be used with Express in answer to that question. And as far as registering it locally, let's see here. Let me find that for you. So when it, let's see, you'll see, let me get this up for you here, 1 second. In, let's see, 1 second here. Right, so you'll select the geographics, identify the location, and then at this point you will select your own key. Let me do that. So that is running. The information is collected and submitted. And then at that point, pardon me, Azure knows the identifies the connection and connects to SQL.
And hello, this is another interpreter. It's still Ben presenting. And he said, okay, now for registering the database, if you're saying, if you want to do the replication for which one. So this is how to prepare the local, the SQL server for the Access over here. Okay, so the question is asking if the connection was successful. No, I just did something wrong, so I realized I had typed my name wrong. That's the question. I hadn't done the server name. Sorry, I need to focus a little bit more here. Okay, that's better. It has now gone through. Okay, let me try this one more time. All right, okay. So now the database registration, it means that it will show up now in the Azure. And we can look at an example of this. So as now it says it's online. It means it'll be ready to just hold on one moment. Okay, so that is how that you can connect your local, the SQL server with the cloud, with the Azure cloud. Okay, and it has not, replication has not begun yet. This is just the registration. Okay, now before I begin, we're talking about syncing what kind of groups. These groups that I'm talking about are with what kind of data you would like to replicate. And if you can see what tables for, and you can see any number of database up to 30 MBs as well, as we had said before. And we could make sure and make all the replications from there. So one database can be joined and sync with several groups. And for example, why that's important, if I have maybe, say, 2 tables, and I need to order or, do some kind of shopping, and purchasing. And so any kind of lookup if you need to, make changes to that. So, for example, if, the orders have come up and you need to make changes on those. And so if you have 2 different tables, so I could use, one database and synchronize both of those different groups. You could set up, make the changes onto one, and, you feel like the other one was, only used once a month or, very, very spread out in between those. You could still have the different groups being synchronized, and you would not only have to use one group, so you could know that that's a good use for that. So, and next, I would like to show how this was created and how all the different databases can be added. So you can go ahead and watch. Okay. So on the bottom, it's talking about, so you pick a group for this thinking group. And so before I had said, first of all, I'd like to just put the name in. And you pick the regional area. And so then remember how I said there's one Azure database for the requirement. And let me check on this one. And it says this one's not available because it's not an Azure hub. And so we'll have to create an Azure hub. So I'll have to back up and do that process real quick. Okay, so I'm making one Azure in South, and I did another one in Western Europe. Okay, so now there's 2 Azure databases, one in South America, for example, in the United States, and one in Western Europe. So in my local database, there will be 3 spokes. So I'll go ahead and synchronize the groups. Okay, and you can see that there's several options there, but they're all included within Azure. That's why you must have only one Azure per group. So now I'm picking the southern U.S., as the headquarters. So now we're going to be talking about conflict management, and I will be discussing more about that later. But just for now, I've just picked the hub. And you notice that there's also the options for the regional and for the Azure. So I'm just going to pick Western Europe for now. And so these options are, how it can be synced together. So it can both send and receive the information. For example, if it was, unilaterally be sent and received, and for any business needs could happen. Okay, and so now the synchronization has begun with one database, but now I'd like to do 3, so I'm going to add one more database on here. And you can see that you do not have to register because there's a server already in there and it's already connected, so you don't need to sign in. And now we have 3. You can see the 3 databases, and you notice it says it's not ready, right? Because we still have not made the table and the registration for the replication to begin. Okay, and now I'm going to be speaking about the async rules. And so when we're picking, you can pick whichever table that you need. You're not required to sync in the beginning. You can decide whichever fits your business needs that you're making for when you want the replication to actually happen. For example, you can pick maybe just some parts, some columns. You don't have to do the entire one. You can just pick and choose what you need, which can be a lot better, and you can have a greater amount of management of these. And now we'll be talking about the syncing rules as well, and I'll show you a little demo. So under the synchronization rules, let's see, first I'm going to just save the changes. So now, without any rules, I can pick any database to be able to start. And for example, so you saw that I had created 2 databases, one in South America and then also one in Western Europe. And now the database is available. Let me show you on here. So now both databases do not have any tables in there. They're just empty. But it means so that when I use my local database, it will be a model and it will be synchronized to the other databases. Okay, so now I have picked my my regional database. And it has taken all the information, and I can go ahead and pick and choose which parts of the tables that I need. So I can just go ahead, and take either the columns or just pick the entire table. It's up to the person. So once I have, like I said, you can pick and choose how you need, but there's also a feature that you can pick every single one or go one by one and just use. You can decide how much you would like to synchronize and how much you'd like to save. So, and now this has begun, it has started running, and it will be, you'll be able to see the data and the models. Okay, and as you can see, the tables, they have all started coming into the system, and the synchronizing is occurring.
Hello? Hello?
Okay, it will take a couple of minutes because if there's an extensive amount of information, it will take some time for to be able to populate all the databases. Okay, and to answer one of the questions, so you can manage each column. You can fix a column, but I'm right now speaking about automatic synchronization. I'll speak more about that later. Right now, I'm just explaining how exactly the process works. Okay, and now you can see the column to the left, and it has the time signatures on there. The timestamps on there, but I would like to call row vision. So I have taken off the timestamp, so I want you guys to remember that. Okay, so it's the row vision, and so now as you can see, so you'll be able to see the same tables. Hold on. So you see now that the row vision, the timestamps are gone. It's because they do not replicate, and it makes sense because it wouldn't work for all the different time zones. It would be impossible for those to replicate on there. So that is it's a slight problem. If there's like a situation where I need a timestamp to be put on the different databases, then you have to go into your program, and see if the timestamps are running, and that could be a potential problem. But the way to avoid that problem is when it's being synchronized and when the models and the database, you could make your own model where when the synchronization happens, when the database, only the data comes up, so you have more control of, for example, you could include all the views and including the process as well and the codes, and you can make sure that everything is included in your own if you wanted to. That's your own decision. And I'll show you right now next how to do that. Okay, now I'm going to go back just a moment. So now I have removed the databases from the synchronization group. Okay, so I'll be waiting a couple minutes for this to finish. But while I'm waiting, I'd like to show you how to make the replication and the model to begin. So on the SQL Server, on the Managed Studio, so above 2012 or 2009, I believe. So 2012, you'll see several options that say data tier that can be applied, and that's a new way where you can make the synchronization happen. Or you can also do model and data. for the regional sequence and Azure as well. So you'd make what you'd call DAC, PAC. And so that would be a replication of the entire model. So when we make the PACA file, then you'll have to be transferred to the Azure. Okay, so that file then, hold on just a moment. Okay, so I have gone ahead and taken off one of the old groups so that I can create a new one with a different approach, so you can see how the synchronization would be different. So once you've made that file, then you can go ahead and put it into the cloud, into the Azure. So the old database, so now it says to establish the data tier and run the PAC, the DAC. Okay, so I've changed the database name. And now when it's uploaded, then you'll do the copy model and not the database, only Okay, now the schema has been set up on the two Azure databases. So that way, both the Azure databases have the exact replication with the timestamps, as well as the views, and including the process and any other mode. They will all be the same exact synchronization process. And then you can go ahead and manage that and change if you need to. If you need to make any kind of renovations to your SQL Server, you could do that in this kind of the DAC will make this process a lot quicker and easier. So then now the Western Europe, the database for that, obviously it's much farther away, so the process took a little bit longer.
Well, I'd have to hook it all up. What do you mean? He's doing stuff here.
So now you can see the timestamps are there. And the timestamps have now been replicated, which is I just wanted to make sure that all the databases look exactly the same once this process has been done. So now I'll go back to the synchronizing groups. So it'll be the exact same process I just showed, but I'll be adding a new synchronization group. So the Azure that I just set up with the database, you can go ahead and pick the options like the first time. So one of the questions was the DAC, could it make the changes? The answer is yes to that question. So there's several more exact rules that are involved in that, and I will talk about this more in depth later. But basically, thank you for that. It was a very good question, and the answer is yes. Okay, so I will also be doing the regional database again. And I have to save the changes. Okay, so then I'll pick the regional database again because it has all of the data in it. And the data starts synchronizing from there. If the data is empty when it begins, then it could take more time for the synchronization to fully make it through the spokes. So I've picked all the tables and selected each one. And now I've saved the changes. And it has now started the synchronization process with the data. And all of the schemas are now being set up. I only have the data needs to be synchronized. Okay, I know it's kind of a lot of information, but I hope you know that this demonstration has made it more clear for you guys. Okay, so because I did not write any of these codes myself, that's amazing because, before we had to do replication requires a lot of code writing and, and this is just, moving around and clicking the different buttons and it's done. And the process become, much simpler. And let me check on one more thing. So now the data is being synchronized, and when it's done, then all the databases will have the exact same data. And in the end, to reiterate, when it's done, they will have the same. Let me go back to a previous slide. So now I'd like to be speaking a little bit more in detail. But before I continue, I'd like to make sure if there's any questions about what I've been demonstrating so far. Okay, that's a good question. Yes, thank you. Okay, so talking about the conflict resolution. So somebody has said, so what if many, many changes were made in the different spokes? So what would happen with that? So thank you for that question. So when there are structural changes made in one database, so the question is about if that would change all of the databases. But first of all, you'd have to have the syncing be turned off from one of those. And you could also use the DAC, PAC for the schemas established as well. So meaning during the renovations you're making or the changes, then you have to, the synchronizing would be switched off for a little bit. But I'll actually be discussing more in just a second about that as well. So first I would like to focus on conflict management. So as you see, there's the switch, the hub that won and the client won, and those two. And what do those exactly refer to? So the winning hub means the person, for example, if the first person who clicks and onto the hub and I make the changes, then I would essentially win that hub. So except for if my client's number 1, 2, 3, for example, and another client wants to make, it has different information, but if I was the one who had gone onto the hub first, so their changes would be lost because mine was the first one that had happened. And then the other person, so the only changes that would be seen would be the one of the person who won the hub. So, and then if a client had won, so it doesn't matter, whoever was the last person to click onto the hub, then they would keep whatever changes they had made. But the thing that I really want everyone to remember is that the order of who, it's not, we don't know the order and we have no control over the order of who clicks and touches the hub first. But for each database that's connected to the hub, for example, if there's one person who had control of the hub and then it went to another, it could essentially switch. The hub itself is the thing that decides who has control at that moment. So, and you could think of a couple issues. How would I manage conflict resolutions? Maybe if you didn't want the changes the other person was making, so you could put down a timestamp of who was the user or where the database was. You could put exactly that information right onto there. And so that everyone could know, and they would be able to be aware of knowing, okay, that hub that had won because of the timestamp and the information that was on there, and the changes would be saved. So, and somebody had also asked me, so will the changes be lost if another person won? And the answer is no, because when it's synchronization, it's fully automatic. So there's no UI. So we know when you log in the information, but it will not show. So you can create a way to do your conflict resolution yourself, or you could copy the data locally in your own table. And if there's a conflict, you can go back and see, my regional area, and go ahead and make the changes again onto there. That's one way that it could be handled. Another question about the conflict management. Is there any more? Okay, another good question. They said, person said, how do I know, when the data is being synced? So I just want to clarify something. So remember that synchronization follows the columns and the tables. So for example, if one person made a change on one of the columns in the same row, that change, and then if another person had made, a different change to another column, then they could both sets of information could be saved and synchronized. But for example, if it's in the same row, same column, and there's a change, and both people had made the same change to the same row and the same column, that is when the conflict arises. And that's the only time that there will be a problem. But if there's two different rows and two different columns, there's changes made, that will be perfectly accepted and made right into the program. So, but remember, it is set on who wins the hub. So I would suggest that you set up, my username and the time changes, and say which database that I put it in, and put the timestamps on each one of the columns in each row, so that when the synchronization was you could see, who the last person was and who had made those changes, and you could know any data that was missed. Another question was about synchronizing. Can you use a backup plan? And a backup plan. I mean, there's a potential to use that, but I can't see reason. You could definitely experiment and see about that. But for now, it would only be one-way synchronization. Because that's the way it's set up so far. So, and one person asked me the timestamp, how do you decide that? So I'd like to clarify a little bit about that. So the timestamp, it would be more the order of who is communicating with the hub first. That's how it's set up. So, for example, one hub A, one hub 2, and if there was a conflict in those two, the one A hub, if the one database had contacted with the hub first, then that information would be kept. But to go back on, it's for example, if the schema was won by one of the customers in one database, if another person had won. So, for example, if there's 3 databases, there's like say A, B, and C. So if all 3 of the databases had a conflict at the same time, then A, say if they had contacted the hub first, then the changes would be saved from A, and then it would go down, and then if C had contacted second, they would save their changes, but the ones in A would be dropped. And so B, it was the last one to contact the hub, so the changes from C would be lost. So, for example, A and C would have lost their information because of B. So, but when A is the first one to contact the hub, then that means that the changes will be saved. Does that make sense? So now we'll be setting up, how we set up the first time we start the synchronization. So first, I'd like to show 2 different ways. The automatic replication, the automatic schema with the data, or the schema that can be done right away that you decide, like a personal. There's 2 different ways. But the important part is that when you set up the data, it has to be in one database. For example, if you don't want to have 3 full databases, so when the first one, when synchronized, then they would all just be in complete conflict because they would all be full. You don't have to be comparing all the different data. So the first synchronization would take forever. So that's why it's best for when you first set up the database, and put all the data, it's best to set up with databases that are empty, so that when they're connected, then the data from the first database can be easily synchronized into the other ones. So first I'm going to show you the DAC and the PAC. So make sure that you have, everything in process. You can see how everything goes. And the constitution through all the databases, make sure that they're all functioning equally. Amazing, but okay. Okay, all right. So when you have 2 choices, you can automatically click on it, and it will show what it looks like. For example, how do I start? Under changes, you can set up where it says automatic
synchronization. If you have picked 30 minutes, so that means each 30 minutes will be automatically synchronized. Or if you pick 1 hour or 1 day or 1 month, those are your choices about how often you want to synchronize. But it's important to consider the price and your business needs. Going back, remember I told you there are 2 examples. If you have shopping orders that people place, or they want to synchronize more often, and there are others that have a slow schedule and they want information, they don't want things changed again, or just their home addresses and stuff, and for example, do not change, then perhaps they want this one every day. You can lower your price for the data transfers, depending upon your budget. So now, suppose you don't want an automatic one and you want to do it yourself. Just you click synchronization and it will start running and it'll be sending the data. And when you decide it's time, but one important thing that I want to impress on you is that if you want automatic synchronization, that means if later you want to improve the database, the first thing you have to do is stop the automatic synchronization. If you don't do that, the automatic changes will be affected. So for this same schema, if you want that improved, you need to take off the automatic synchronization. And then when the schema is the same, then you can turn that back on again. I want to speak a little bit about that. Generally speaking, you can add new schedules, or new columns, or you can eliminate that, a new graph or new columns, and you can make a model change. If you decide that you want to change the data type or change the number, change to text, no, don't do that. It will cause problems. It will cause the signal to fail. And once your database is set up and everything is synchronized, if you change the old columns or the old schema, the model, you'd have to add instead of using the old one and make changes. Avoid that. Why I'm talking about money, it's sad because it's not free. The Azure is not free. And in generally speaking, right now, it's in preview. The service right now is free, but I don't know if they're going to decide to charge a fee later. But so far, my customers say they're satisfied with it, and it's a cheap price because it's small data synchronization, and they're satisfied with that. But there are 2 possible prices to consider. Each SQL, each set of information, and each database, generally speaking, will have 5 GB free. I can't hear you. 5 gigabytes of free transmission, and then up to 5 gigabytes, and then it would cost, I think, maybe about 6 cents for each gigabyte of transmission. And if it's less than 5 gigabytes, then it doesn't cost anything for the transmissions. But it's an important tool that you want to have is to use Azure cost figures or cost estimates.
Actually, it's pricing calculator.
You'll see 3 databases. SQL, SQL. Oh. Okay. Suppose we have 3 setups, and that will cost around $30. And then we hit the transmission. Five gigabytes would be free, and the goal is under 12 gigabytes. And that's how much you expect to pay, plus the SQL. So when we did this example, 30 gigabytes of transmission, that's a lot of information. It would be $3, so that's really inexpensive. And the total for the month that you'd be spending is about $35 for 3 databases of synchronization, and that's a good deal. And people always ask me, what's the difference between standard and basic and premium? And I don't know yet. I have to read more about that. So I guess this is all I have, all the questions and answers. Maybe I could show you more. Are there any other questions? I think maybe we're done.
All right, everyone. So now we can ask questions from Ben. You can leave your question in the comments or speak up through your microphone. You can ask questions about the presentation you just did, which is thank you very much, Ben. Very good. Or about Access or SQL Server in general. So does anybody have a question? Does anybody plan on using Sync in their current implementations with Access? Okay, we have a question. How can Access, ACCDB, MDB connect to all this?
We do. I've explained my clients have access to the program that's connected with SQL database. For example, I'll show you what it looks like. I could have access to this program that can make transfers from different SQL databases. I set up a local, and then a local area, and then maybe there's an area in South America, or somebody's traveling, or something like that. Maybe they're at Starbucks, and they were in Western Europe, and they'd have to change. And I can reprogram through Europe. And the people who working on in Western Europe would have that option or that file. They'd have the replication. They'd have that database, and it will be fast. it wouldn't be going back to United States, but it would be in Western Europe's Azure in their database, their synchronization. So that's why it's really cool that the synchronization is not noticed, and we don't see all that. And the access is ongoing, and I look at my data, and I change it and I add to it. And then the one quote that I thought about is if we have open access and I change the data, what happens to the database in the synchronization? Is it the same change? Is this the same data? Or will I see mistakes, changes in the data? Well, you can write a VBA to help with this information, to get new information and see the changes. And that's how you would handle that.
All right, thank you, Ben. Anybody else has a question for Ben or anything about AccessUserGroups.org? Before we wrap up, any other questions regarding Access or SQL Server? All right, Ben, well, thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and switch the presentation over to me now.
Okay.
All right, a couple of housekeeping items before you go. Again, we have 2 more meetings coming up this month. We have Access España, which will be launching on
I'm
Thursday.
sorry, this is the interpreter. There was some static in the line, and I couldn't. Did you give dates for the meeting?
Yes, there's 2 more meetings this month. On May 15th at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, we have Access España, the first group to meet in Europe, and that will be at 9 o'clock p.m. their time, but 2 o'clock p.m. over here. So anybody who's Spanish speaking is welcome to attend. And we also have Access Latino, which is on May 21st at 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. If you recall, I asked you to register. If you do register and you go to a chapter, you'll see this join this chapter here. So you can join multiple chapters, and that's going to help us know who's interested in what chapter. So once you rejoin the Access User Group, you'll get a newsletter from us with the meeting dates for the month, and you'll be able to get some additional news from us. Keep also in mind that we are partners with Office 365. So if you do want a free E3 365 account, which comes with Microsoft Office 2013, please let me know either through this website at Contact Us or email me at jsoto@itimpact.com. I'll write that in the comments there. And I want to thank you once again, Ben, for presenting today. We are still interested in anybody who would like to present later on this year at this group, as well as topics that you would like to hear. This month's topic would be SQL Server Security, which is a chat that I just did at POG, which is the Portland AccessUserGroups Group meeting in Oregon last weekend. So we're going to talk about how to secure your SQL Server database from prying eyes, as well as how to configure access encryption between SQL Server and Access. And we have a short video, which promises to be very interesting. So that's going to be our topic next month, and please email me if you want to hear about other topics going forward and other presenters, people who are in this audience who would like to present. Please keep in mind that any presentation you make will count to your Access MVP. So when you do apply to become an Access MVP, they do take kindly to the fact that you're presenting at user groups like this one. So consider presenting, because the only way you're going to get good at it is trying it and doing it, right? And so we reach an end to today's meeting. I want to thank everyone for coming here today. Thank you very much for attending. We do appreciate, Ben and I both appreciate you here. Unless there's any final questions, anybody have one last comment or question? All right then. So I will leave the chat window up. This has been Juan Soto from Chicago. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you,
Ciao.
everyone, from Ben.
All right, bye-bye.
Oh, my God. I was so lost.